Working for a startup can be transformative for your life in any country, but especially in countries like India, for example. We're working on a full video about this, literally on how a startup job can provide transformative income to someone. But today I want to talk about getting a job at said startup. Our team is now coming up on 40 people, which is a bit mind-blowing every time that I think about it. And we still have some openings, by the way, if you want to check them out. But the point is there are two clear paths to working for a tech company or for a tech startup. The first one is very simple. You just have to be an engineer. Engineers are so scarce these days, you are essentially guaranteed a job if you are a good developer. Now you'll be treated to flexible hours and good salaries and all the perks. So that's one path. But what about the rest of the jobs at a startup? What if you're not an engineer? Today, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how startup founders approach recruiting in tech companies, what skills and what qualifications we're looking for, and if you're a recent graduate or if you come from a different industry, how you can bridge your way into a startup job. Okay, so let's start with early stage companies. New companies are, well, of course, new, and a lot of questions have not been answered for those companies, and those questions usually extend into tasks. Ideally, a company should be iterating really, really fast, and that is what we look for in those early hires. The decision to hire someone at the early stage comes from two reasons. One, either the founders need to delegate tasks that they no longer want to do, or two, they're looking for a skill set that they don't have. Now, in that first case, which is delegating tasks, essentially what we do and what we've always done is try to make a list of tasks that we can delegate, that we no longer feel that we should be doing. And we try and group them into group skills, like stuff that a single individual can have and that they can easily learn because they're really close to each other. And that's when we go and create an opening. We group tasks, and this looks like a role that we could call something like X. In that case, we're looking for people that can wear many hats rather than specializing in a single team. We look for people that won't complain if they end up doing something they weren't hired to do. On the contrary, we want people who want that challenge to learn a completely new skill if the company requires it. And the way we've always formed roles for new hires has been, like I said, by grouping tasks that are somewhat compatible. I'll give you one example. One of our first hires, Gavi, who became our head of customer success for a couple of years. She used to manage support requests from customers, automated onboarding, and maximize conversions. Now, there's no career path in college for becoming this, like a customer success manager. It touches a little bit of marketing, touches a little bit of sales, but you don't study for it. So college degrees were mostly irrelevant for our recruiting. What we mostly cared about was their experience doing something similar for other startups. The fact that she had used Intercom, the tool that we were using at the time, was an absolutely killer qualification. We also met her during our time at Startup Chile. She was working for another company back then, and that company was already out of business. We didn't poke her out. That's kind of like a douche move in our ecosystem. But anyway, beyond anything, we cared about her proactiveness, her ability to propose new ideas, or her ability to learn fast. Now, on the other hand, companies also hire skill sets that they don't have. For example, none of us, my co-founders and I, none of us had sales experience when we started Slidebean. And one of our first go-to-market strategies was to go after mid-sized businesses, which required a sale. Now, in that case, we look for people who are obviously more experienced than us in that field. And of course, it's hard to hire someone for a role that you don't really know how to do. What questions do you ask, and how do you know if they give you the right answers? And this is where recommendations go a long way. In our case, this hire was our first head of sales, Derek, who was ending a tenure at Xero. We felt that Xero was a similar enough company to Slidebean. It was SaaS, originally founded outside of the US, but now tackling the US market, similar subscription size and price, targeting small and medium businesses. One curious note to my point, we didn't end up working well with sales. We didn't end up selling well to medium-sized businesses. So Derek's role had to transform into something else. Once again, these employees need the willingness to move their task from something to work on something completely different from what they were hired for. Now, there is a common theme in both of these examples that I've given you, which is experience. If you have never worked for a startup, getting the first foot into this world is probably harder than ever. But going for early stage companies, I think, is a good bet. The barrier of entry is absolutely lower for them, though it comes with its own risks. Your job might become irrelevant if the company pivots and you can't transform, or the company might run out of money. That's just a real possibility. Now, another way in which you can get that experience is also doing it for free. Cash is, of course, a concern when running a company, and that's just the truth. If a company really needs a hire, then they're often willing to come up with alternatives. And one of them is a combination of salary or even zero salary with sweat equity, where you're compensated with a fraction of the company, i.e. stock options or stock. Not a big fan of this since equity may be cheap at first, but it can be expensive later, so you don't really want to use that as a founder. But this concept of trade, of work for experience, is not entirely crazy. One other initiative I found recently was the Human Protocol, which have also been trying to solve this thing for years. They created this concept to allow people to essentially exchange work. The first concept they did included helping companies choose between an A/B test or solving CAPTCHAs. These are simple tasks that need to be done by a human. So essentially you solve a CAPTCHA and you get tokens as a reward for it. But their plan is much bigger than this. They want to use their token to let people collaborate on much larger projects and get compensated for it as their work is validated by the rest of the community. But the point is that showing that you're curious, that you're willing to play around with these new technologies or to collaborate online with teams or just to keep yourself busy in tech and learning and exploring, that's the kind of people that do well with startups. Okay, so now let's talk about later stage companies. I can't speak for anything later than ourselves, which again are coming up on 40 people, but here's what I know so far. Now that the team and the company are bigger, we know much better what these roles are. Again, on 40 people, we're either replacing someone who might have left or we're hiring someone to help somebody out. These jobs at larger startups are of course less risky. We still don't require startup experience for all tasks, but that willingness to explore and experiment with technologies is always something that we look for. A common question that we ask during our interviews is, what is something really cool that you have achieved at your last job? Which I think is a fantastic way to learn about someone's creativity, the way they delegate tasks, the stuff that gets them excited and just creativity or what they've been able to achieve. We also ask them about their favorite startup, and we get a lot of people that say that their favorite startup is Apple or Google, which of course are not startups. A good way to tell that they're not in the vibe. We want people who discover these cool little niche tools that they love, who hopefully try to reach out to the founders. Again, that shows that they're willing to download and play around with something and fall in love with that app. We also now have the luxury of expecting them to have heard about Slidebean somehow. But that's really a new thing that we're only learning to leverage. College degrees are still mostly irrelevant at this stage in the company. We care a lot more about the experience, not just work experience, but life experience. The fact that they moved abroad or backpacked the world or they're running a side hustle. We love that stuff. Now for the management side, we can almost always afford someone with startup experience. We of course look to promote our own team rather than hiring someone new. The only management hires, again, are for skills that we haven't already developed ourselves or where we're looking for someone with a much higher or more experienced background. Hopefully this gives you a good insight of what companies look for in their team members, at least at our stage. I also want to thank the Human Protocol for sponsoring today's video. Applications built on their human technology are already used by millions of people to label data or to prevent bot abuse. You can literally create an account and begin collaborating and of course earning tokens at humanprotocol.org or by clicking the link that we will leave in the description. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next week.